Today, Tiesto is recognized as one of the biggest names in electronic dance music. He is frequently featured on the world's largest festival stages, in the hottest nightclubs, and on the radio waves. For many, he is seen as the godfather of a genre of music that took the world by storm over the course of his 3 decades-long career. Between 2016 and 2024, Tiesto would take the next big step of his career, as he would seek to push his sound to a wider audience, and began working with well-known artists. Despite this new mainstream appeal, Tiesto would continue to support the underground EDM community through his original productions, epic performances, and by elevating new and upcoming artists. This is the story of how Tiesto broke through to the mainstream. This is the history of Tiesto.
Sometimes the bomb might explode without any warning.
Heading into 2017, Tiesto would once again play at the 3 major EDM festivals: Ultra Music Festival, EDC, and Tomorrowland. Like I said in the last video, I'm going to try and focus on the more unique performances and not just repeat the fact that he plays at these big festivals every single year. So from this point on, just assume every year that he's playing these festivals. I'm not going to double check this fact because there's a 95% chance that it's correct. So, focusing on some of the more unique events, in January, Tiesto would invite Loud Luxury to perform a guest mix on his Club Life radio show. Tiesto was actually an early supporter of the duo, even before their breakthrough hit Bodies, as he released their track Fill Me In on his After Hours sublabel back in 2016. Continuing on, Tiesto would play at what was advertised as the final edition of the Dutch music festival Sensation White. For those that aren't familiar, Sensation White is a music festival held in the Netherlands that began back at the turn of the millennium, that is known for its all-white dress code alongside incredible stage designs, which featured rotating stages, massive structures, and even floating jellyfish. While this festival might not have the most international notoriety, several famous Dutch DJs have attended the festival as guests, to only then later become popular and then play at the festival, and is kind of seen as a rite of passage for Dutch DJs. Tiesto actually played the festival back in 2006 during his initial rise to fame, but like I said before, the 2017 edition was actually advertised as the last year of the festival. So I imagine at the time being invited to play this final show must have felt special. But it turns out this actually wasn't the final edition of Sensation White. And in the following year, 2018, the festival concept would continue, but it was held in several cities outside of the Netherlands, including Madrid, Sao Paulo, and Jakarta. There were actually plans for the festival to return to the Netherlands in 2020, but government-mandated lockdowns caused the event to be cancelled. The festival would end up returning in 2021 and has continued up until today. But enough talk about specific Dutch EDM festivals. Tiesto would also to continue his Las Vegas residency with the Hakkasan group, performing at multiple day and nightclubs across the city, including Hakkasan, Wet Republic, and Omnia Day and Night Club. Speaking of Las Vegas, Tiesto would take part in a benefit concert to support the victims of the shooting at the October 1st Route 91 Harvest Festival. I'm not exactly sure how much this concert raised, but I did see one report that Tiesto himself donated $200,000 to the cause. However, shifting over to the music, in October, Tiesto would release the 5th edition of his Club Life Mix CD, with this edition being titled China. Unlike the previous editions, Tiesto really didn't have any specific stories or deep reasoning behind the title of China. And from one interview with Billboard, he basically said that he just hadn't done any tracks for China before, so he decided to make an entire album. But he also added that the crowds he saw in China helped to inspire the big room sound of this album. The fact is, the desire to have more big room music for his live sets is what actually drove Tiesto create this mix compilation. With one interview with High Snobbity saying that, "I made it for myself because I couldn't find enough energetic up-tempo music," and adding in a separate interview with Billboard that the album was custom made for the big festivals and for the big stadium shows. This edition of Club Life would be unique because all of the tracks on the album would be either produced or remixed by Tiesto, John Christian, or Swag Q. In one behind-the-scenes interview, Tiesto mentioned how he decided to work with the other two co-collaborators because they shared his vision to create more big-room festival-sounding music.
First I met John Christian a long time ago. He made a cover of my track Flight 643. And right away I heard that this guy has something special. You hear right away that he works in a big studio. He has a very special production quality that's a lot higher than most producers in the world. We talked about the dance music scene and that nobody is making really energetic, big room dance music anymore. We should really try to create that sound again.
On a quick side note, SWAT Q is actually an acronym for sound with a certain quality. So there you go. However, as always, I'd like to go through a couple tracks off the album, letting you know what I think about them, if there was anything about them that made them iconic, and if there's any cool or interesting facts that I happen to find out. To start out, we'll take a look at the opening track of the album, Tiesto's intro edit of his collaboration with Kashmir called Harder. The track provides a great opening for the mix CD, with its dark distorted growls giving way to the singer Talay Riley's soulful vocals. The song adds some drums before speeding up and beginning to build over the original song's housey piano and chopped vocals, before dropping into a big room house style of drop, with a rolling bass line and a loud horn lead synth. Also, I just really love this part 8 bars in, where the bass comes rippling back in after being filtered out. Tiesto always manages to add these sort of unique flourishes to his song, and this one is just so cool. But the song would see moderate success, peaking at number 28 on the US Dance Music Airplay chart. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, the Airplay charts are unique in that they count the combined performance of the original song and any remixes. So, this version of the song was not solely responsible for its chart performance. Next up, we have my sleeper pick from the album, Tiesto's Big Room House remix of Crazy by Jekko and featuring Delaney Jane. The follow-up to L'Amour Toujours, this remix would go for a big room house style, starting out with some vocals from Delaney Jane, before hitting you with a tremor-style saw wave synth, and then building up into a pretty classic big room house style of drop. Now I have to admit, is this song a bit of a cheesy big room house tremor clone? Yes, but do I still enjoy it? Yes, of course. But unfortunately, because this wasn't the most popular song, there really isn't any interesting background information that I was able to find about it. All I could really find was some debates on Reddit on whether the original version or the remix was better. Personally, I like the remix, but that's just me. Next, let's take a look at the most successful track off of the album, which was Boom, featuring Brazilian dance music producers Seven. Seven were some of the original innovators in the Brazilian bass sound that rose to popularity during the mid to late 2010s, and were known at the time for the 2016 track BYOB, which sampled the System of a Down track of the same name. For those that aren't familiar with the Brazilian-based genre, the genre grew out of the deep house scene in Brazil when a group of Brazilian producers began modifying the plucky deep house bass sound by making it more aggressive and metallic sounding, as well as adding in more growls and bass ripples to give it a more big room flavor. The genre has some pretty nebulous boundaries because several producers like Alok, Vintage Culture, Seven, and Vinny were all grouped together as Brazilian-based despite making pretty substantially different music. But for our case with Tiesto's track Boom, he and Seven would utilize the genre's distinctive aggressive plucky bass guitar sounds. However, they would tone down some of the distortion in favor of a more natural sounding bass guitar, making this one of the first examples of Tiesto's slap house sound that would appear in some of his most successful tracks during this period of his career.
Bring that ass back like a boom, 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 boom.
The song would be fairly successful as it would peak at number 14 on the US dance music charts and would also have a vocal edit with rap vocals provided by Gucci Mane. However, this song's success wouldn't be able to save the CD, as it would go on to only reach number 17 on the US dance music album charts, which would be a big step down from the prior two editions and would be the worst performance of any of Tiesto's Club Life mix CDs. I think there was probably a couple of reasons for this lack of success. First off, on the macro level, Big Room House was beginning to see a drop in its overall popularity, as more chill genres like deep and tropical house were seeing surges in popularity, specifically as a counter to the Big Room House festival sound. And secondly, despite all the positivity for the songs on the album, in my opinion, this is my least favorite edition of Tiesto's Club Life mix CDs. I think the album was flawed from the start. Because it only features 3 artists and it was created over such a short period of time, at the end of the day, it just seems like it all sounds the same. I think this Reddit post kind of sums it up the best, where it's notable that there's different genres and melodies and different sounds being used across the album. At a certain point, you just notice that the same elements keep popping up over and over again. Like when I listen to the songs individually, I'm like, dang, these are actually pretty sick, but every time I listen to the whole mix as a compilation, while I'm doing chores or whatever, by the 30 or 45 minute mark, I'm just like, are we really playing the same thing here, guys? The lack of success of this mix CD would lead Tiesto to make changes on how he would release his more club-focused music going forward. As he would say in an interview with the New York Post, he felt like people didn't have the attention span for albums anymore, and they preferred to listen to individual songs through streaming services like Spotify and YouTube. And as a result, Tiesto would end his iconic Club Life mix compilations. It's kind of a bummer that this legendary mix series would end on such a low note, but it was still incredibly successful at spreading dance music to a wider audience. I tried to see if anywhere had a total combined number for the total album sales across all of these CDs, and unfortunately it just doesn't seem like that information exists, so I really can't quite quantify the impact of these albums. However, outside of his Club Life album, Tiesto would release a couple of other tracks that I'd like to highlight. The first of which, and is probably the most successful of the group, would be Carry You Home featuring Aloe Black. You may recognize Aloe Black's voice as the singer of Avicii's 2013 hit Wake Me Up. In my opinion, this song really reminds me of Tiesto's previous hit, Take Me, featuring Kyler England, because it's really Aloe Black's vocals that steal the show, and the drop itself lacks a lot of that deep bass that I wish it had.
When you're tired and you're weary and you have no strength to go on, let me carry you home. Let me carry you home. When there's no one to turn to and all you have faith in is home, let me carry you home. Let me carry you home.
Tiesto would release an alternative big room remix of the song that, at least in my opinion, has a lot more energy and bass to it.
Let me carry you home.
On the more historical side of things, in a 2020 interview, Aloe Blacc would say that this was his first dance music collaboration since working with Avicii on Wake Me Up.
You know, after Wake Me Up, I was not really sure if I wanted to do any dance collaborations, unless something was going to be a moment that I felt was as lyrically and musically as strong as Wake Me Up. And when we had our opportunity to do Carry You Home, that was the first, dance collaboration release after Wake Me Up, mainly because, of your music, your legacy. I definitely felt like that lyric and that song was going to be strong enough to stand next to something like Wake Me Up.
However, at least according to my research, in the prior year, 2016, Aloe Blacc provided vocals for the track produced by Zedd called Candyman. Perhaps he recorded vocals for Tiesto first, but the Zedd track just happened to release before it. But I couldn't find any information confirming this, so just perhaps take this quote with a grain of salt. However, getting back on track, Carry You Home would see limited success, peaking at number 26 on the US dance music charts. Next, I'd like to take a look at a pair of remixes that Tiesto would release on his After Hours label. The first of which would be his remix of Malibu by Miley Cyrus. Personally, I think this is an awesome, summery deep house track, and I've kind of been playing it all summer long ever since I came across it during my research. This remix, along with the other official remixes, would help Malibu become Miley Cyrus's first song to reach number 1 on the US dance club charts. As I've mentioned before, the dance music charts can be a little confusing because of how they account for various remixes. And personally, I remember the Him remix being played a lot on SiriusXM radio. But the Tiesto remix has more YouTube views, so I can't really say for sure which remix helped this chart performance. I know it wasn't the original because it's definitely not a club track. The next track I'd like to take a look at is Tiesto's remix of What About Us by Pink. Similar to the Malibu remix, this is another deep house take on a popular pop song. Though in my opinion, this one's a little more soulful and the bass line is thick, and Tiesto takes the original song's classic piano chords and gives them a house music twist.
What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us?
This remix as well would help push the original song to reach number 1 on the US Dance Music Club song charts. Though, once again, as I've mentioned before, it's hard to gauge how much of an impact a certain remix has on this chart performance. Beyond his own music, Tiesto would continue to release music on his Musical Freedom label, releasing tracks from the likes of Jekko, Snails, Fabian Major, and Kreider. However, none of these really stood out as being successful or influential. Tiesto would also continue to release music on his Deep House After Hours label from artists like Loud Luxury, Vintage Culture, and Esquire. Heading into 2018, Tiesto would once again play at the major festivals around the world. And I know literally like 15 minutes ago I said I wasn't going to keep talking about Tomorrowland and EDC and Ultra Music Festival, But I gotta bring up Tomorrowland this year because Tiesto would be invited to host his own stage as part of his collaboration with Budweiser, and he would invite several up-and-coming artists like Mike Williams, Brohug, and Kid, as well as a few more established names like Jaws, Oliver Heldon, and Don Diablo. Tiesto would also host the second edition of his Northern Lights tour, consisting of shows across Norway and Iceland, and featuring Alan Walker and Kygo. This tour wasn't super influential, but there is a cool recap video produced by the Final Kid, who is known for creating many of the Ultra Music Festival after movies. On the music side of things, Tiesto would release his first ever EP, called I Like It Loud, which would include 4 festival-ready tracks that spanned several genres, from big room house to future bounce and even festival progressive house. This style of release would come to replace Tiesto's Club Life mix series. But to start out, we'll take a look at the title track of the EP, I Like It Loud, which was a collaboration with John Christian. The song is actually based off a 1997 hardcore techno track of the same name, produced by Marshall Masters.
So, yo, Marshall, bring the melody. All right, sing. I want the people sing it out. We go like, yeah. I'm gonna sing the melody now. Check me sing it. Check me sing it. Yeah.
Tiesto's version starts out with the iconic vinyl scratching and vocals, before interpreting the song's iconic synth into a big room house style supersaw wave, before building up and dropping into a typical John Christian rolling big room house bass line and a quacky lead synth.
Bust the speaker.
As a bit of a cool fact, I happened to find that Tiesto played an early version of this track at the 2015 edition of the Amsterdam Music Festival. Going in tracklist order, the next track I'd like to take a look at is Tiesto's collaboration with Mesto called Coming Home. Now, I previously touched on the genre of future bounce when I was discussing Tiesto's remix of Harder with Kashmir, but this track is an even better example of this genre, and if I were to show someone an example of this genre, I would probably show them this song. But it starts out with a bit of a pan-flute sounding synth that's backed by a supersaw wave, before building up into a classic future bounce style of drop, with the supersaw wave synth backed by alternating thumping beat and plucky bass guitar. I couldn't find that much interesting background information about this track, besides the fact that the duo were working on it for almost a year and a half. The final track on the album would be Tiesto's collaboration with fellow Dutchman Modi, titled Break the House Down. While this seems like a pretty standard big room house track, I do really enjoy the choir-like vocals during the build-up, and the drop is incredibly heavy with a massive trumpet and stabbing woodblock sounds. Despite how much I enjoy these tracks, it doesn't seem like they had very much impact, as I wasn't able to find any chart performance or very many interviews about these tracks. But they're pretty good, so give them a listen if you haven't heard them before. However, there would be another track released by Tiesto in 2018 that would end up becoming one of his most successful tracks of his career.
I just saw that sushi from Japan. Now yo bitch wanna kick it, Jackie Chan. Now yo bitch wanna kick it, Jackie Chan.
Of course, I'm referring to his collaboration with Dzeko, Preem, and Post Malone titled Jackie Chan. The song would hit number 52 on the Billboard Hot 100, as well as number 3 on the US dance music charts, beating out his previous hits of Red Light and Wasted. It would also reach number 1 on the US Billboard Dance/Mix Show Airplay charts, being the third Tiesto track to do so. However, it would actually be the first track to achieve this for Dzeko, Preem, and Post Malone. The original vocals of the song were actually released on Preem's album Light of Day.
She said she too young, don't want no man. So she gon' call her friends, now that's a plan. I just saw the sushi from Japan. Now yo bitch wanna kick it, Jackie Chan.
Dzeko would introduce Tiesto to Preem, who would show him the original version of the song, before Dzeko and Tiesto decided to make their own take on the track.
Well, the biggest help we got from Preem, you know, the Canadian rapper and producer. So he played me a version of the Jackie Chan song, and you know, we liked it. But Dzeko and I liked it. We were like, we can make a better version than that.
On the more history side of things, Tiesto has always maintained that he had a long-standing relationship with Post Malone, even before he began seeing popularity within mainstream music. However, in many of his interviews, he didn't provide exact dates on when he met Post Malone, so I did a little bit of sleuthing and found this 2018 interview, where Tiesto said that he met Post Malone 4 years prior, so that would put it around 2014, which could potentially be before his first major hit, White Iverson.
No, actually Dzeko was the guy who introduced me to him. He was like, you gotta check out this guy, Post Malone, he's blowing up, and that was like 4 years ago. He was like doing very small shows in LA, and Dzeko became good friends with him there, and that's how I got introduced to him.
Tiesto would also release a big room mix of the track, which reminds me a lot of Valentino Khan's iconic track Deep Down Low. Beyond this hit track, there are a few other songs from 2018 that I'd like to highlight. The first of which would be the heavy electro house style track called Wow. This song would actually be Tiesto's first solo release in several years, as it doesn't contain any featured vocals or a collaborator. The song starts out with a sample from the iconic Duck and Cover PSA from the 1950s.
Sometimes the bomb might explode without any warning.
Before introducing a deep, almost guitar-like synth playing an aggressive melody, before building up and dropping into the same melody, but this time adding in a buzzing top end to the synth that helps build the energy. The song really reminds me of classic early 2010 electro house tracks like Congo Rock's Babylon.
Sometimes the bomb might explode without any warning.
On the remix side of things, Tiesto would be fairly quiet in 2019, but there are a pair of remixes that I'd like to take a look at. The first of which is his remix with Swat Q of MC Foti, J Balvin, and Future's track Bum Bum Tam Tam. The song would be a good example of how Tiesto was beginning to get the hang of the slap bass sound, as he seamlessly blends the pucky bass line with the flute lead and the vocals of the original song.
Ese boom boom tam tam, ese boom boom tam tam, mueve ese boom boom tam tam, ese boom boom tam tam, mueve ese boom boom.
And finally, on the after hours side of things, we have Tiesto's remix of Ed Sheeran's song Happier. It's another great chill, summery deep house track, but this one's bass line is just a little bit thicker and more club focused than the previous after hours remixes.
Baby, you look happier, you do. My friends told me one day I'll feel it too. And until then I smile and hide the truth that I know I was happier with you. Hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah.
Beyond his own music, Tiesto would continue to release several tracks under his Musical Freedom and After Hours label. On the Musical Freedom side of things, Tiesto would release music from the likes of Bassjackers, Bro Hug, and Sid. And on his After Hours label, he would release music from the likes of Mahalo, Promised Land, and Loud Luxury. By the end of 2018, Tiesto had successfully overcome the lackluster performance of his final edition of his Club Life mix series, and he released one of the most successful tracks of his career, establishing a relationship with more mainstream artists that would become more prominent throughout the years to come. What's up, Ravers? I just want to say thank you for clicking on this video, and if you're enjoying it, please consider dropping a like or leaving a comment down below, as it would really help me out within the YouTube algorithm. I try to give videos like this out every single month, so if you want to hear more stories about EDM history, consider pressing that subscribe button like you're a fake DJ pretending to press buttons. But anyways, back to the video, guys. Heading into 2019, Tiesto continued to play across the globe, as well as hosting his Las Vegas residency with the Hakkasan group. In October, and as part of the Amsterdam music event, Tiesto would host the 10th anniversary show for his Musical Freedom label, featuring guests like Cheyenne Giles, Dallas K, and the Bassjackers. As well, Tiesto would continue to support several up-and-coming artists through his Club Life radio show, one of which would be Mahalo, who had just seen success in 2018 with their collab So Cold with DLMT, and had released music on Tiesto's After Hours label. Tiesto was an early supporter of Mahalo, who would then go on to release their smash hit Not Watching Anymore in 2020. As well, in March, Tiesto would host Feed Me as a guest on his radio show to promote his return to touring and the release of his album High Street Creep. On the music side of things, in April, Tiesto would release his second ever EP, titled Together, continuing the trend of using EPs to release his more festival-focused tracks after the end of his Club Life mix series. The title Together would be a reference to the fact that all of the tracks on the EP would be collaboration, and not to a thing that people wouldn't be able to do in less than a year. But, as always, I'd like to go through a couple tracks off the album, let you know what I think about them, and if there's any cool facts that I happen to find out. To start out, we can take a look at the first track off of the EP, Halfway There, featuring Lena Leone, which was a collaboration with Jekko. The duo of Tiesto and Jekko were on fire at this point, coming off their mainstream success of Jackie Chan, as well as the festival bangers of L'amour toujours and Crazy. Halfway There would be another festival banger from the pair, as it opens up with a buzzy lead synth playing a fairly simple melody, before building up and dropping into the same melody, but this time backed with a thick and distorted bass line. The song kind of reminds me of classic Dada Life, which means I'm gonna like it. Unfortunately, the song never seemed to break into any of the charts, so it's hard to exactly gauge how successful a track it was. But, on the more historical side of things, in an interview with Billboard, Dzeko would say that Tiesto and him began working on the track more than 2 years prior to its release. Also, interestingly, the song includes production credits for the LA-based producer and songwriter April Bender. Based on a video of Tiesto premiering the track at Tomorrowland that she posted to her Facebook page, it sounds like she helped Lena Leone write and mix the vocals for the song. But next up, we have my favorite track from the album, which is Party Time with Swag Q. In my opinion, the pair resolved many of my complaints that I had about their work on Club Life Volume 5, as this song is absolutely not a generic big room house track. In fact, I have a really hard time ascribing a genre to this song at all. This is mostly due to the song's lead synth, sounding pretty much like nothing I've heard before, with the best description I've found saying it kinda sounds like a bagpipe. But even the drop itself defies genre characterization, as the best I can really describe is that the wubs and chopped up plucky sub bass kinda remind me of bass house. But the best thing I can do is just play the song and let it speak for itself.
Let's get dirty.
Also, I just love this part 8 bars into the drop, where they pitch down the bass kick. This is that Tiesto secret sauce that makes this track so special. Unfortunately, there's not a lot out there about the history of this song, besides this one quote from Tiesto stating that Swag Q showed him the original melody, and this was the starting point for the song, saying it sounded original and there was nothing out there like it. The final track I'd like to take a look at is My Whistle, which was a collaboration between Sickdope and Tiesto. The song itself is fairly simple, starting out with a whistle and a fluxing build, before dropping into a blaring synth that would end up becoming a signature sound for this part of Tiesto's career, backed by a fairly groovy bass line.
My whistle.
In an interview with Billboard, Tiesto would say that he was a longtime supporter of Sickdope, going back to his 2016 release, Snake. And from my own research, I saw that Tiesto had released one of his tracks back in 2017 on his Musical Freedom label. In the same interview with Billboard, Tiesto would say that when Sickdope wanted to collaborate with him, Tiesto had an idea for a big drop, and he also helped to refine the whistle sound that the song is named for. As a whole, I think Together fixes a lot of the issues I had with Tiesto's previous festival-focused music released on Club Life Volume 5. The wide range of collaborators brings a breadth of different sounds and perspectives to the album, and the returning collaborators like Swag Q and Dzeko brought new and unique sounds to their music. If I had to rate it, I would probably put it in A tier between Club Life Volume 3 and 4. However, Together would not see much success outside of my own personal opinions, as neither the songs on the album or the full album itself would enter any of the US dance charts. I'm not totally sure why this album didn't see more success. Maybe taste at the time had just changed as the big room house sound across the board was beginning to shrink in popularity, and as more house and techno focused artists like Don Diablo, Oliver Heldens, and Fisher were on the rise. Or if the COVID pandemic of the following years prevented these songs from really becoming staples on the festival stages. But, luckily, this lack of success did not dissuade Tiesto from releasing his more festival-focused music this way, and in just a couple of years, we would be treated to a sequel EP. As well, outside of the album, Tiesto would continue to release his own music and remixes, with a couple of them that I'd like to take a look at. The first of these would be Accordiao by Tiesto and Mosca. Released in August, 4 months after the initial release of Together, it would actually be retroactively added to the album digitally. This is why you may see some people saying that it was part of the album, while others disagree. But the track would fit right in on Together, as it was another collaboration featuring a unique style and sound. The song starts out with an accordion synth before building up and dropping into a heavy, plucky slap house bass line. Interestingly, the song's accordion chords actually come from a traditional Colombian song called Fiesta en Corralejo by Ruben Dario Salcedo Ruiz. A couple of EDM news sites that I found actually said that this was a sample. However, all of the versions of the song that I found from Ruben Ruiz don't seem to have the correct accordion sound. I did happen to find a Facebook page that focuses on Colombian folklore and culture, and they said it was actually a version performed by Alfredo Gutierrez. And when I took a look at that version, the accordion sound does seem to be a lot more similar to the track. However, it's probably just as likely that they just used a synth to get that accordion sound. Next up, on the remix side of things, we have Tiesto's Big Room remix of Niels van Gogh's Pulvertrum. The song starts out with some housey piano chords and a mysterious vocal, before building up and dropping into the same plucky bass line as Boom, but this time taking it in a much more darker direction. This remix is actually based on a 1998 classic trance song, which according to Billboard was a top 10 hit across Europe, certified gold and won the German Dance Award, and was the unofficial anthem of the Love Parade in Berlin in 1998. Beyond his own music, Tiësto would continue to release music on his Musical Freedom and After Hours record labels. On the After Hours side of things, Tiësto would release music from the likes of Chemical Surf, Notion, and Sick Dope, while through his After Hours label, he would release music from the likes of Josh Charm, Nicky Gritty, and Blur. Heading into 2020, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Tiësto would not play at the major festivals across the world, as the clubs and festivals would be shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, he would take part in several digital festival events like Tomorrowland around the world, SiriusXM's Dis Dance Festival, and a live performance at Red Rock Amphitheater with a limited attendance of 175 people, with the proceeds of this event going to the Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation. This performance at Red Rocks would also include an opening set from Tiësto's new deep and melodic house alias, Ver West. Back in July of the same year, he would release his first track under this name, titled 5 Seconds Before Sunrise, premiering at the Tomorrowland Around the World Digital Festival. The song itself consists of beautiful and ethereal chords, arpeggios, and soft notes, and is just an all-around great listen. A couple of interesting facts about the track. First, the song would include co-production credit for UK production duo Camel Fat. And secondly, the title itself would be a reference to Tiësto's previous track from his Elements of Life album, 10 Seconds Before Sunrise. Since we're on the topic of the music, I think we should take a look at the biggest release of music from Tiesto in 2020, and that would be the release of his 6th studio album, The London Sessions. With this album, Tiesto sought out inspiration and sounds from the city of London, similar to what he had done with his previous Club Life mix series, bringing in British artists like Gorgon City, Matthew Burns, and Jonas Blue, as well as vocalists like Becky Hill, Rita Ora, and Mabel. There would be a few exceptions from this British trend, with the most notable ones being the re-release of Tiesto and Dzeko hit Jackie Chan, and the song On My California featuring vocals from American rapper Snoop Dogg, and production credits for American producer Sean Frank. As always, I'd like to go through a couple tracks off the albums, let you know what I think about them, and if there's any cool facts that I happen to learn about them. So, going in reverse tracklist order, because fuck it, that's the order I want to talk about these songs in, we have the surprise hit from the album, Lose You, featuring Alira. The song starts out with dark chords layered with Alira's echoing vocals, before dropping into a deep and plucky Brazilian bass style of drop, backed by more soulful vocals.
Before I let you go, we got the night. No one's ever known my body like you. I'm like, ooh, na-na-na, and I know it's a little like that, like that, like that.
I know we can never go back.
I don't wanna lose you, but if I don't, I'ma lose myself. I'ma lose myself. I don't wanna lose you, but if I don't, I'ma lose myself. I'ma lose myself.
As I mentioned before, the song would end up being a surprise hit, as despite not being released as a single, the song would end up reaching number 2 on the US dance music airplay chart, making it the second best charting song from the album in terms of airplay, only being beaten out by Jackie Chan. I personally remember this song being played non-stop on SiriusXM. Next up, we have my sleeper pick from the album, Lifestyle featuring Camille. Personally, I just love the I don't give a fuck vibes of the lyrics that are backed by a deep house piano and soft beat before building up and dropping into a super unique, squeaky, distorted bass line.
I got no fucks anymore.
Because this wasn't one of the singles off the album, there isn't a ton of background information about it, outside of the production credits, which include Wax Motif as an assistant producer. I really couldn't find any details about his exact role in the production of the songs, I just really wanted to share it because it's a pretty good song. Finally, we'll take a look at one of the hit singles off the album, Ritual, featuring Rita Ora and Jonas Blue. The song is an awesome mixture of classical house piano chords, tropical house vibes, with Rita Ora's soulful vocals pulling it all together. I mean, the chorus of this song is just chef-kissed beautiful.
And I always saying it like a prayer. Oh, you touch me there. Oh, you'll always be my ritual. Always love you all through the night and beat there when the sun is rising. Oh, you'll always be my ritual.
On the historical side of things, Jonas Blue mentioned in an interview with EDM.com that he met Tiesto at Club Live in Miami. And in an interview with Tiesto by Universal, he praised Jonas Blue for his production talent, bringing a unique soundscape to his releases, and Rita Ora's vocals for taking the song to the next level. Unfortunately, the album would underperform the sum of its part, as it would not break into the US album charts, and thus perform worse than both Kaleidoscope and A Town Called Paradise. I'm not totally sure why the album performed so poorly, given the success of the individual tracks. It could be that many of the singles were already released prior to the release of the album, the pandemic limited its success, or Tiesto's changing opinion on the release of full albums that he mentioned during its release of his EPs, leading him not to push the album as hard. But I personally think it's probably the best of his post-trance albums. Outside of the album, Tiesto wouldn't be done with his success in 2020, and he would have one more notable release before the end of the year, and it would end up becoming one of Tiesto's most successful tracks of his career.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
Released in late September, The Business would go on to reach number 69 on the Billboard Hot 100.
69. Oh. Metaphorically 69. Ooh, perverts.
As well as number 2 on the Hot Dance and Electronic Songs charts, and 24 on the Pop Airplay charts. The vocals of the song are actually from James Yami Bell. I'm not sure why originally these vocals were not credited as a feature, but according to an interview with GQ, when asked about the vocals, Tiesto said that they were sung by a very special vocalist. These vocals would actually be the starting point for the song, before Tiesto would apply the iconic pitching down effect and constructing the rest of the song around them. On the more historical side of things, the song would actually be Tiesto's first release on Atlantic Records, as after the release of London Sessions, Tiesto would shift the distribution of his Musical Freedom label over to them. As with the previous shift back in 2014, there really isn't a ton of background information about this shift, but I did find these quotes from Tiesto and the CEO of Atlantic Records saying that both parties were excited to be working together. While on the topic of his Musical Freedom label, throughout 2020, Tiesto would continue to release music from the likes of Bijou, the Bingo Players, and David Guetta and Morton, with the release of their collaboration Save My Life, which would be an early example of their new future rave sound. Tiesto would also continue his releases on his After Hours label, with the releases from the likes of Mosca, Alexander, and Space Motion. By the end of 2020, Tiesto has successfully persevered through the pausing of live events due to the COVID pandemic, all while releasing some of the most successful tracks of his career. And as he headed into 2021, he would be ready to get back to business and begin touring around the world again. In 2021, Tiesto would make his return to live events, with the first show that I could find, at least according to Tracklist 1001, being at one of Tiesto's favorite clubs, Live in Miami. Throughout the summer, Tiesto would kick off his Back to Business tour, with several dates across the United States. Tiesto would also host his own stage at Creamfield Music Festival in the UK, hosting the likes of Cream, Morton, and Alesso. With the return to live events feeling like an embrace to his old routines, there would be a couple of shifts for Tiesto. First, he would change things up with his Las Vegas residency, moving away from his long-term partnership with the Hakkasan Group and beginning a residency with Zouk Nightclub and AO Day Club with the Zouk Group at Resort World Hotel. According to an interview with Billboard, Tiesto had a long-running relationship with the Zouk Group, running back to when he played at their original nightclub in Singapore back in 2017. Tiesto would also make changes to his Club Life radio show, as he would reduce the length of the show down to 1 hour a week, and ending the guest mix portion of the show. He would make up for this with his Musical Freedom radio show, which originally started back in 2012, but had traditionally been pretty sporadic. However, in 2020, he would begin offering the show up to guest DJs on a weekly basis. And in 2021, he would invite guest DJs like Morton, Vintage Culture, and Cheyenne Giles. But switching over to the music, Tiesto would be pretty quiet through the first half of 2021, as it wouldn't be until August that he would release his follow-up single. Despite the wait, Tiesto would once again strike the iron of his mainstream popularity while it was hot, as this song would also see significant mainstream success.
Don't be shy, shy, shy. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. La 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 la. La 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 la.
While sonically, Don't Be Shy is definitely a pop song that is primarily driven by its vocals, I do want to point out how its bass line is based on Tiesto's deep/slap house sound, that he developed on songs like his remixes of Bum Bum Tam Tam and Happier that I talked about earlier in the video. By this time, the public had become receptive to this sound, and the song would be fairly successful, reaching number 4 on the US dance music charts and number 43 on the Latin airplay chart. On the history side of things, the song would be the first instance of Tiesto working with a Latin singer on an original single, and it's also the first time that Karol G did a song in English. Also, Tiesto mentioned in an interview that his collaborator, Timo Brunilla, would help to create the original melody, and apparently there's an original demo version of the song with Tiesto and Timo singing, which I just wish I could hear for myself.
I fell in love with the melody right away when we wrote it back in Finland with the producer Timo. And we approached Karol G to sing the song, and she heard the song and she was like, oh my god, this song is amazing. And she was so happy with the song. And then she sang it, because we sang it ourselves first as a demo, and it sounded terrible. Yeah. And then she sang it, and it made the song 150% better than the original.
With one successful mainstream release under his belt, Tiesto would shift his focus to more main stage music, and in October, Tiesto would release a follow-up EP to his Together project, with this release being called Together Again. Tiesto described this project as a collection of festival-ready party tracks that he produced during lockdown. So let's take a quick look at a pair of songs from the EP. First, we'll look at I'll Take You High. Despite being the third track on the album, Tiesto would actually use this track as the opening track for many of his sets throughout the year. And this is for good reason. The song has this vibe of constant rising energy. There's probably a music theory reason for this, but I'm not knowledgeable enough to know exactly what it is. It kind of reminds me of Armin van Buuren and Ferry Corsten's collab Brute. I'm pretty sure there's only like 2 people listening to this that actually know what I'm talking about, but that's the song this song makes me think about. But regarding the song itself, it starts out with some soulful vocals before dropping into iconic future rave style of synth. One interesting fact I learned about the song during my research is that the lyrics are sung by Gregory Welton Jr. There's not much out there about him, but I found this Instagram post where it sounds like he didn't want to be famous, and this may be why he's uncredited on the song. The next song from the EP I'd like to take a look at is Clickbait. For this track, Tiesto would use an aggressive electro house style, and he would reuse the growling lead synth from WoW, this time combining it with a punch kick that sounds a lot like Show Me from back in 2015. Outside of the festival-ready tracks from Together Again, Tiesto wouldn't be done with releasing music in 2021. And the next month, in November, Tiesto would release another more mainstream-focused song that would end up becoming perhaps his most successful track of his career.
What's the motto? Drop a few bills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. We've been up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me, did I just stutter?
Similar to Don't Be Shy, The Motto is another vocal-focused pop song that Tiesto added his now signature slap house sound. As I mentioned, the song would end up being extremely successful, and it would be the highest charting single from Tiesto on the Billboard Top 100, peaking at number 42, as well as number 2 on the US Hot Dance/Electronic Songs charts, matching the success of his previous most successful track, The Business. On the interesting side of things, the song includes songwriting credits for British singer Claudia Valentina, and it seems like the original plan was to have her sing on the track, or she was at least recruited to do a demo version of the track, I found a YouTube video claiming to be the original demo version.
That's the motto. Pop a few pills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. Drinking the whole damn summer like a sick motherfucker. Tell me that I just stood up. That's the motto.
Obviously, take this with a grain of salt because it is just a YouTube video, and I wasn't able to find anything confirming the validity of this version, but at least to me it seems pretty real. My tinfoil hat theory is that this track either started out as a part of or grew out of Tiesto's London Sessions project, given that Claudia is from the UK. But, like I said, this is just conjecture and I couldn't really find any evidence to support this. However, to round out 2021, Tiësto would release several remixes that were either successful enough or interesting to me that I'd like to take a look at. The first of these is his remix of French 97's Diamond Veins, which Tiësto released under his Ver West alias. This remix is another dark and beautiful melodic house track, but this time Tiësto utilizes the original song's haunting vocals and brings in a driving arpeggiated bass line. The next track I'd like to take a look at is Tiësto's remix of Topic and A7S's interpolation of ATB's classic rave track 9pm, called Your Love. While this isn't the most dramatic remix from Tiësto, he does dial up the slap house song in the track and makes it much more club focused.
Let me feel your love.
I do want to point out that this song has a similar vibe to Dido and Gigi D'Agostino's remix of In My Mind, which I wanted to point out just so that I can say this, that if I had a nickel for every time Gigi D'Agostino came up in my videos about Tiësto, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? The final remix from 2021 that I'd like to take a look at would end up being the most successful remix of the year. Tiësto's remix of Pepas by Farruko. Tiësto would take the original song's iconic buzzing synth and use it to create a main stage festival ready drop, and it would end up generating more than 10 million views on YouTube. Beyond his own music, Tiësto would continue to release music through both his Musical Freedom and After Hours labels. On the Musical Freedom side of things, Tiësto would release music from the likes of Bayor, James Hype, and Ownboss, with perhaps the most influential track from 2021 being the release of Ownboss and Sevic's track Move Your Body, which alongside tracks like A Craze's Do It To It would help push the growing resurgence of tech house to a wider audience. And on the After Hours side of things, Tiësto would release music from Alara, Korlova, Spada, and Jack Back, which was an alias of David Guetta. By 2022, Tiësto had once again returned to his globetrotting ways, as he would play at several major festivals across the world. However, I'd like to point out a few unique shows that I found during my research, the first of which was called The Trip, which was a 3-day music festival in Cancun, Mexico, featuring several sets from Tiësto as well as several other Musical Freedom artists, like A Craze, Joel Corey, and Loud Luxury. Next, in July, Tiësto would have a bit of a homecoming, playing in his hometown of Breda, with his fellow local hero, Hardwell, as part of a music festival put on by Dutch radio station 538. And finally, Tiësto would make a short appearance on the main stage of Coachella alongside Karol G, to perform their hit Don't Be Shy. And over the next few years, Tiësto would make several appearances at Karol G's shows. Tiësto would also continue his DJ residency in Las Vegas with the Zouk Group at IU Day Club and Zouk Nightclub. As well, he would continue his weekly club life and Musical Freedom radio shows. with the Musical Freedom Show hosting guests like Tajamo, Ombas, and Sevek. On the music side of things, Tiesto wouldn't release any albums or EPs this year, so I'm going to go through the notable tracks in chronological order. So, to start out, released in February, Tiesto would do a remix of Acraze's breakout tech house hit Do It To It. Tiesto was a big supporter of the original track and even played it during a set on the main stage of EDC in 2021. The remix starts out with some subtle changes, with Tiesto swapping out the bass line for the same dark plucky bass that he used from his track Boom, before really switching things up and bringing in his signature buzzing lead synth. Next up, and released in April, we have the track Savage featuring Dioro. The song starts out with some soft pads and vocals before hitting you with a somewhat housey sounding piano, before building up and dropping into an electro house style beat that sounds a lot like Dioro's hit track 5 Hours. Similar to a Cordial, this song would be retroactively added to the digital release of Together Again, and, interestingly, the song includes writing credits for Bas van Dalen, who is a Dutch singer and producer, and I believe is the most likely candidate for the vocals on the track, despite not being directly credited as the vocalist. The song would end up being fairly successful, peaking at number 24 on the US dance music charts, and it was the first time in almost 8 years that a track from Dioro had broken into this chart. After the success of Savage, and only a couple months later, in June, Tiesto would release his first mainstream-focused track of the year, Hot in It with Charlie XCX.
Hot in it, I look hot in it. Rocking it, dropping it. Shake my ass, I'm stopping it. I look hot in it, hot in it. I look hot in it. Rocking it, dropping it. Shake my ass, I'm stopping it. I look hot in it, hot in it. I look hot in it. Tonight I'm gonna be rocking it.
As I previously mentioned, the song would be much more mainstream focused, and it would end up having some significant success, reaching number 24 on the UK singles chart, as well as number 10 on the US Hot Dance and Electronic Songs charts. On the history side of things, Tiesto mentioned in an interview with Zen Lo of Apple Music One that he and Charlie had been attempting to collab for several years, going all the way back to 2013 when Tiesto remixed a song that she was featured on from Iconopop. Also, interestingly, he mentioned that the original demo of the song had pitch-shifted male vocals. And I wonder if, like Don't Be Shy, Tiesto used his own voice for this demo version of the song. And if so, man, I wish I could hear that original demo version. But, personally, I'm a big fan of the Tiesto Hotter mix of this track. It's similar to his earlier remix of Do It To It, where the drop starts fairly similar to the original, before adding in Tiesto's signature buzzing lead synth and spicing it up.
Be rocking it, dropping it. Shake my ass, I'm stopping it. I look hot in it, hot in it. I look hot in it. Rocking it, dropping it. Shake my ass, I'm stopping it. I look hot in it, hot in it. I look hot in it.
After notching one successful mainstream track under his belt in 2022, Tiesto would release a couple of festival-ready bangers. Starting out in July, Tiesto would release another Latin EDM crossover track, this time doing an interpolation of the viral Colombian song of the same name, Baila Conmigo, from Davey, Victor Cardenas, and Kelly Ruiz. Tiesto would utilize the original song's haunting vocals and iconic trumpet melody before building up and dropping into a big room-esque beat and Tiesto's iconic buzzing lead synth, following the same melody.
Imagínate, tú y yo en la playa, la arena, el mar, el sonido de las olas recorriendo todo tu cuerpo. Bésame, tócame y baila conmigo.
The song would end up having moderate success, reaching number 49 on the Billboard Dance Music chart. Personally, this is my favorite of Tiesto's remixes of Latin songs. On the history side of things, the only quote I was able to find from Tiesto about this track mentioned that he played Baila Conmigo in his sets, and this led him to want to release this version. So, my guess is that this track may have started out as a VIP for his sets before he was able to get the rights for an official release. While we're on the topic of interpolations, the next track I'd like to take a look at is Can You Dance, or its alternative name, 2 Might Be. This track is another festival-ready banger that starts out with a spoken word vocal before building up and dropping into a heavy and high-energy electro house style of drop.
So as you struggle to find the feel with your feet, ask yourself, can you dance to my beat?
Now, it might not be immediately obvious that this track is an interpolation, but earlier in 2022, Fisher would release a track called Palm Beach Banger, which features the same spoken word vocals and a somewhat similar sounding synth. Well, the most recent inspiration for this track came from Fisher in 2022. The vocals of this track actually originate from 1997 from the New Jersey duo Blaze. After a series of festival bangers, Tiesto would release a second successful mainstream track in November of 2022.
All I know is 10:35 and I can't feel your arms around me. Let 'em drown me. All I know is 10:35 and I'm thinking God you found me. That you found me.
Similar to Don't Be Shy and Hot in It, this would be another vocal-led track with Tiesto's deep slap house sound. And similarly, the track would see significant mainstream success, reaching number 3 on the US dance music charts and number 21 on the US pop airplay charts. A couple of interesting facts about the song. First, the song would be created at the request of the Atlantis Hotel in Dubai, and this is actually where the music video is filmed as well. Secondly, Ryan Tedder of One Republic would actually help Tiesto write the song.
The song came together because I wanted to write a song for a new resort in Dubai. They approached me for make a special song for them, and then we wrote the song 10:35 with Ryan Tedder as well on board. Who's also not a stranger in writing hit songs.
As we move into December of 2022, there's one final track that I'd like to take a look at. Tiesto's collaboration with Solardo featuring Poppy Bascombe, I Can't Wait. This track is a beautiful melodic and vocal house track, and it actually makes me wonder if it originally started out as a Ver West project, as, at least to me, its sounds and the look of the official visualizer are similar to the aesthetic Tiesto used for his Ver West projects.
So
On the history side of things, I found this interview with Solardo from IDM, where he talks about the various elements of the song that came from each artist. They mention that you can really hear Tiesto's more progressive and trance signature sound, whereas the Solardo touch can be heard in the more housey, groovy parts of the track. And regarding the vocals, while this is the first time that Tiësto featured Poppy Bascombe, this wouldn't be the last time, and we would see her featured on another Tiësto track in the following year. Beyond his own tracks, of course Tiësto would continue to release music through both his Musical Freedom and After Hours label. On the Musical Freedom side of things, he would release music from the likes of Wade, Own Boss and Fastboy, and Imanbek and Bayor. On the After Hours side of things, Tiësto would release music from the likes of Francis Mercier, The Pressure, and Miss Monique. After a series of widely successful tracks, Tiësto had become a known and sought-after quantity in the mainstream music scene. However, he still continued to release more mainstream festival-focused tracks, while helping to uplift innovators as new and resurging genres like future rave and tech house began to see wider popularity. And over the next few years, Tiësto would push himself to work with a wider range of artists and utilize more eclectic sounds. – 2023 would be a year of more of the same as well as some changes for Tiësto. Returning this year and beyond the typical shows, Tiësto would host another destination festival event in Cancun, Mexico, with this edition being called Chasing Sunset, and featuring a star-studded lineup with the likes of Audien, Fioro, and Nora Impure. Tiësto would also return as a guest for Karol G for several of her shows, with perhaps the most notable one being the Mañana Será Bonito festival in Medellin, Colombia, to a crowd of nearly 100,000 people. However, the final return for Tiësto in 2023 would actually be a major change, as he would return to Ibiza for the first time in over a decade, as he would start a residency at Ushuaia, which had grown over the last few years to be one of the hottest clubs in the world. In line with his previous Ibiza residencies, Tiësto would bring a stacked lineup of guest DJs, including the likes of Acraze, Elderbrook, and Sunnery James and Ryan Marciano. On the music side of things, the most notable event for Tiësto in 2023 would be the release of his 7th studio album, titled Drive. Unlike his previous album, a majority of the tracks on it would actually be released over the course of the prior 2 years. And among these tracks are songs that I have already touched on, like The Business, Don't Be Shy, and The Motto. However, there are still a couple tracks from this album that I'd like to highlight. The first of which is the track Lay Low.
Lay low, hit the sun, everybody have a real good time. Real good time. Yeah, we cool, yeah, we drunk, lost my mind, and baby, I feel high. I feel high.
While this track is substantially darker and moodier compared to some of Tiësto's more recent singles, it would still see substantial success, reaching number 13 on the US dance music charts. On the history side of things, the song's vocals are performed by Halvor Florstad of the band Skinny Days, and while you might not be familiar with their name, they have worked on a few dance tracks over the years, with perhaps their most notable one being Alone Part 2 with Alan Walker and Ava Max. The second track I'd like to take a look at is titled Back Around and features British producer-vocalist duo Arco. Similar to Lay Low, the song has a much more deeper and darker vibe compared to Tiësto's recent mainstream successful tracks. Though I think this track pushes it even further, and this is probably why it didn't see the same level of success as Lay Low did. In my opinion, I also find the vocals have a much more indie pop style to them, and it feels like a callback to some of the vocals typical to Tiësto's tracks circa 2010 to 2015.
'Cause we know that what will be, will be. Yeah, my love will bring you back around. Yeah, my love will bring you. Yeah, my love will bring you. Yeah, my love will bring you back around.
One interesting fact that I happened to find while researching was a 2024 post on JustJared.com claiming that Back Around was originally worked on by Calvin Harris. Now, this doesn't look like a direct quote from Arco, and I wasn't able to independently verify this fact, so perhaps take this with a grain of salt. As I mentioned, many of the tracks off of Drive came out over the course of the 2 years prior to its release. And since I've touched on many of the more notable tracks, I think it's time we should move on to discussing the album as a whole. Drive would end up being a bit of a bounce-back album for Tiesto, as it would reach number 2 on the US Dance Music Album chart, significantly outperforming the London sessions, which reached number 10, and matching the performance of A Town Called Paradise. Personally, this is not one of my favorite Tiesto albums, for a couple of reasons. First, because most of the tracks were released as singles ahead of the album, there really wasn't anything left to surprise me. So it doesn't feel like there's any reason to listen to the album as a whole over the individual singles. And secondly, many of the songs like The Business, All Nighter, Chills, and Learn to Love featured the same pitch-shifted vocal effects that were really popular during the late 2010s and the early 2020s. So a lot of the album ends up sounding the same to me. One interesting fact about the album is that it was widely reported that the diamond-encrusted racing helmet that was used for the album artwork was a reference to the 2004 Monaco Grand Prix, where a nearly $500,000 diamond was placed on the nose of one of the cars and ended up disappearing. However, I wasn't able to find anything from Tiesto verifying that this was actually the inspiration for the album art, and the closest thing I could find was an interview with The Fader where, at least to me, it sounds like he was trying to distance himself from this rumor, saying that he was attracted to the racing themes and not necessarily the race itself. But Drive wouldn't be the only music that Tiesto would release in 2023, and thankfully a lot of it would move away from the sounds that had become common in his music over the last few years. Perhaps there's no better example of this trend than a song that I consider to be one of the most unique songs of Tiesto's career. Featuring the soulful vocals of Poppy Bascombe, the song takes a bit of an indie pop turn during the build, with its chorus of chanting vocals, before dropping into a breakbeat featuring chopped up vocals. This new experimental sound would see some significant success, reaching number 29 on the US Hot Dance and Electronic Songs charts, as well as number 10 on the US Dance Music Airplay charts. While we're on the topic of unique tracks, for the next song I'd like to take a look at, Tiesto would team up with Italian techno producers Mafame to blend elements of old school trance with the new future rave genre. This song as well would see some decent success, as it would reach number 22 on the US Dance Music chart. On the history side of things, I found this quote from Mafame saying that they spent a couple years sending ideas back and forth with Tiesto, before finally landing on an idea that Tiesto would complete for the final track. Also, on a side note, I feel like the text on the album art is inspired by the anime Ghost in the Shell. Like, I think it's the same font, but just thinner and italicized. But, for Tiesto, these new unique sounds would not be reserved for just the more underground tracks, as in October, Tiesto would team up with Nico, Sway, and Goodfella to release their remix of Tears for Fears' 1985 classic track, Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
Interestingly, this song actually started out as an unofficial bootleg by Just Nico, Sway, and Goodfellow. From what I could find, this original version is a lot darker, as the bright lead synth on the drop is a lot more subdued, and the track focuses a lot more on the churning bass line. This demo version would end up going semi-viral on Instagram before Tiesto would pick it up and put his own unofficial spin on it, and play it during his Tomorrowland set. After, he would get together with the other guys to finish the track and would officially release it. This official release would see some significant success as well, reaching number 10 on the dance and electronic digital sales charts. Tiesto wouldn't be done with a notable remix in 2023. In fact, there's two more that I want to take a look at. But the first of these is called Meet Her, which is a remake of a classic rave track from 1997 from The Whool, titled Meet Her at the Love Parade. Tiesto keeps the original song's iconic synth, but switches it up for the drop by giving it a bit of a tech house twist.
Everybody put your hands in the air. Everybody put your hands in the air. Everybody put your hands in the air. Everybody put your hands in the air.
Unfortunately, Meet Her's success would be limited to the festival scene, as it doesn't seem to have broken into any of the charts. But the final remake from Tiesto in 2023 would perhaps end up being one of the most successful tracks of the year. This mega collab featuring fellow Big Room House legends Dimitri Vegas, Like Mike, and W&W would update Dido's iconic song Thank You with a mixture of old school rave energy with modern future rave sounds. The song would see some significant success, peaking at number 10 on the US dance music charts, as well as going fairly viral, with more than 60,000 TikTok users using the song. On the history side of things, the track originally started out as just an edit, but after seeing a clip online, Dido would end up re-recording her vocals for the final release. And also I just want to point out that I'm pretty sure the lead synth of the song is actually the same one that Tiesto used back in 2014 for his track Drop It Like This. Beyond his own music, Tiesto would of course continue to release music through both his Musical Freedom and his After Hours label. From Musical Freedom, he would release music from the likes of the Chainsmokers, Cream, and the Bassjackers. And on the After Hours side, Tiesto would release music from the likes of Hell Slowed, Lewis, and Cora. Heading into 2024, Tiesto would continue with his prolific touring schedule, with some notable performances including the Kappa Future Festival in Turin, Italy, with this set being published to his YouTube page. This set is an awesome blend of the new and old Tiesto, so if you haven't listened to a Tiesto mix in a while, I definitely recommend this one. Plus, the stage design for this festival is just incredible, so it's a visual feast too. Next, in July, Tiesto would once again appear on stage with Karol G. However, this time it would be in Madrid to a crowd of more than 200,000 people. And finally, one notable event that actually didn't happen was Tiesto would be invited to play as a DJ at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. However, he would have to cancel due to a family emergency. Speaking of Las Vegas, Tiesto would continue to be a resident DJ in the city. However, he would switch up once again, moving away from his residency with the Zouk group that he had for several years, and shifting to Omnia and Live nightclub, as well as moving to Live Beach, Cow Beach, and Wet Republic Day Club. Tiesto would also continue his Club Life radio show, hitting his 900th episode. as well as continue to host guests through his Musical Freedom radio show, including guests like Fast Boys, Toys, and Majestic. However, for one last time, let's shift over to looking at the music. Having seen the success of adapting and utilizing more diverse and eclectic styles in 2023, Tiesto would continue to embrace new sounds throughout 2024. A great starting point for looking at this trend would be Tiesto's collaboration with Rudimental and featuring Absolutely, Waterside. This song is a beautiful, chill drum and bass track, supported by fairly catchy and even pop-like vocals, though they don't sound cheesy since the beat is more eclectic. The track would be fairly well received, and would even reach number 36 on the US dance music charts. The only background information I could find about this track was a quote from Tiesto mentioning that the response from playing drum and bass music at the end of his set led him to want to experiment with the genre, and he enjoyed working with Rudimental and Absolutely. Tiesto would continue to experiment with drum and bass sounds, but this time taking it in a much more aggressive direction with his track Click Click Click, featuring Headaches and bass layers.
That's the songs of my lyrical, yeah, it goes click, 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 clack, clack, clack. That's the songs of my lyrical, yeah, it goes click, 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 clack, clack, clack. That's the songs of my lyrical, yeah, it goes click, 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 clack, clack, clack. That's the songs of my lyrical, yeah.
However, the success of this track would be reserved to being a festival banger, because as far as I could find, it didn't break into any of the dance music charts. An article from EDM.com stated that this project started out after Tiesto dropped Headaches' track Semi-Automatic during his main stage performance at Ultra Music Festival. Of course, Tiesto wouldn't only release drum and bass music in 2024. And for the next track I'd like to take a look at, Tiesto would go back to his roots with the release of Zenless, featuring Lucas and Steve and Silent Child. This track would be a throwback to the big room trance scene of the early to mid 2010s, and has that classic W&W sound with a massive synth and a driving bass. Interestingly, this track would actually be produced as the theme song for a video game called Zenless Zone Zero from game developer Ho Yo Verse. Once again, the success of this track would be limited to the festival stages. However, this wouldn't be true for the next song that I'd like to take a look at.
No quiero vida si no es contigo, contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, ey. No quiero vida si no es contigo, contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, yeah. No quiero vida si no.
Similar to Ritual, I think Contigo is a pretty good mixture of big, deep house plucks and tropical house style vocal chops. And the track would end up having some significant success, reaching number 5 on the US dance music charts, as well as number 3 on the Hot and Latin Songs charts. Interestingly, this song is actually an interpolation of the 2017 song Bleeding Love from Lana Lewis. And as an interesting connection, Bleeding Love was actually originally written by Ryan Tedder of One Republic, who, as I previously mentioned, helped to write 1035. So it's a kind of cool full circle situation. Tiesto would also create a VIP mix of this track that he played during his EDC set, and I'm a big fan of the remix, so hopefully it gets an official release soon.
EDC, how you feeling?
While we're on the subject of remixes, the next track from Tiesto that I'd like to take a look at is his remix of Don Omar and Lucenzo's iconic song Danze Kuduro. For this remix, Tiesto would take the song's original note and give it a main stage festival beat. There's one final remix from 2024 that I'd like to take a look at, and that is the remix of James Hype's track Drums, featuring Kim Petras. Once again, Tiesto remixes this track into a festival banger by giving it a heavy and distorted lead synth that kind of reminds me of Dennis Cuyo's classic track Tongue.
Drums.
Well, here we are. After something like 5 hours of history, we're finally at the last track from Tiesto that I'd like to take a look at. I believe this is his newest single, though it's a little bit confusing because it's out on Spotify, but I haven't seen it posted on YouTube or any other platforms yet. So perhaps like Contigo, there will be an official release of this track soon. But this track is a beautiful, dark and melodic house track, driven by its haunting and ghostly fluxing lead synth.
I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I feel like I've been there and seen it through hell. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls.
Given how new this track is, there really isn't a ton of information out there about it, but I was able to figure out a couple of things. First off, this track is a bit of a Tiesto edit of Swimming Paul's original release of VHS back in April 2024.
I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these girls. I feel like I've been there and seen it through hell. I swear that I mean it, I'm done with these.
Though, in typical Tiesto fashion, he turns up the bass and the groove to make the track main stage ready. The second thing I was able to find is the track's rap vocals are actually from a London-based rapper, Joseph A.D., despite not being credited on either the original version or Tiesto's version. But, as I mentioned, Tiesto's version might not fully be released yet, so we may see these credits on a future release of the song. What's up, Ravers? If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I would just like to extend an extra special thank you, and once again ask that if you liked the video, consider dropping a like or leaving a comment down below. When I started this Tiesto project, I had no idea that it would end up being like a 5 hours worth of content. But if you've watched it all, I'm truly glad that you enjoyed it. I always like to give out some recommendations for further content that people might be interested in, and I'd have to recommend that the 2 interviews that Zach Sang did with Tiesto. They're really great, modern, in-depth interviews with him, and they go into a lot of detail of his newer tracks. As well as the Kappa Future Festival that I mentioned earlier as being a really good representation of Tiesto's entire career with a mixture of modern and, classic tracks all together. I'll add those links down below if you're interested in checking them out. But until next time, as always, stay dancing, Ravers.